So I'm just going to make a really quick video for the fourth servant song, Isaiah 52:13 through 53:12. I'm going to walk you through a dynamic translation that I've made. This is the first video, hopefully, of many where I break down how I translate this fourth servant song. This passage is just in Christian history. It's like the backbone of atonement theology. At the very least, you can say, when the church has tried to explain what the meaning of the death and resurrection of the Messiah, or the death and offering of the Messiah's life means, they pull out this song for hundreds of years, this passage of Isaiah. So let's get started. So how atonement works, Isaiah 52:13 through 53:12. So this is going to be a dynamic translation of a historically difficult text. So let's just get to the translation. There's not going to be a whole lot of commentary, hardly any at all, probably. So why not another translation of Isaiah 53? Might as well. So I have seen that there is, first off, there are a lot of problems with this text, partly because of the reception of the manuscript and some of the complications of how the LXX disagrees with the Masoretic text, and there's a difference with a couple differences with the Dead Sea Scrolls, and the Targums differ from the Masoretic text, and it just seems like there are textual problems and some manuscript corruption. So it makes this a difficult beast. It makes it worth translating multiple times, especially to keep it vibrant and understood as language evolves. So let's see. I know that you probably don't want a whole lot of explanation, but I can't just read it already. I'll just give you a couple more heads up about it. So some notes. I expanded the textual content of this passage in order to make it explicit ideas that are more implicit in both the Hebrew grammar and the vocabulary itself, as well as ideas that are more implicit in the larger context of Isaiah as a massive work. I'm basically trying to make explicit things that are implied, partly because in the broad, sweeping work of the prophet Isaiah, ideas are iterated, reiterated, and recapitulated. So I tried to pull some of that in and make it explicit in my translation. That makes it longer. And apparently, parallelistically is not correctly spelled, or it just doesn't exist. But I basically tried to translate directly from the Hebrew the core meaning, and then I would parallelistically rephrase the same idea. In other words, I would just say the thing, and then I try to rephrase the thing in a kind of more idiomatic, vernacular way, and sometimes expanding it to pull in more concept from Isaiah to make it more clear. And I'm actually going to make another video to explain how a dynamic translation works. So here we go. Isaiah 52:13. Attention, everyone! Look at my servant. He will act wisely and succeed in his endeavor. He will be placed on the lofty heights and lifted up, a sign above. He will be installed on the most elevated of hills. This exaltation will shock them, just as when looking at you made the life drain out of so many of them, and seeing you made them like dead men. The sight of you was so marred and deformed beyond human visage, your once human form ruined by the disfigurement of your lesions. Thereupon he will cause them to leap back in horror, and even kings will shut their lips tight, silenced, because the thing that wasn't told to them they'll clearly see, and the thing they didn't hear they will understand. Who heard our report and judged him faithful? Who actually believed what they were hearing from us? Who was let in on it? And who could actually see what the arm of Yahweh was up to? And like a little suckling infant plant, the servant grew up before Yahweh, a small shoot from Israel's soil. The servant came up in the world like the root of David, up out of a dry, unsupporting, and unsuspecting land. Since he lacked the stature and form we associated with majesty, we didn't even notice him. See it from our perspective. In our eyes, he didn't possess an appearance that would make us fawn over him in envy. The servant was despised, viewed with disgust. Men purposefully stayed away from him and avoided contact with him. He was a man of sorrowful suffering and pain. In fact, he was quite acquainted with sickness, on a first-name basis with it even. He was like a pariah, somebody used to having people hide their faces from him. We considered him beneath our dignity, and we labeled him a nobody, setting his value at nothing. And all this when in fact just the opposite was happening. We were the sick ones, and it was actually our illness and injury he carted off, carrying it away like our servant. But we got it twisted, a misdiagnosis, and to us he was something different. In our estimation, and according to our professional opinion, he was plagued from above, violently struck by God and put down by him. And yet, despite our doctored version of the events, another unexpected reversal was happening. The servant was actually pierced from our actions, from our own transgressions. He was dressed in wounds from our rebellion. What really crushed him was the iniquities we performed. But the discipline we prescribed him actually made us whole and well. And in the very lesions and stripes put on him, we were healed. Don't you see? All of us, every one of us are like sheep that have wandered away, misled and in error. Each one of us turned aside and went our own way. So Yahweh caused the servant to go and urgently plead on our behalf. Yahweh made the servant make intercession with the iniquity of all of us, pressing between both parties, us on the one hand, and the premeditated wickedness we freely chose to do on the other. He was oppressively driven, Gentile slave drivers pressing him into service, forcing him onward. The servant's tormentors made him crouch low in humiliation, and he was severely put down and subjugated. In spite of this, the servant remained silent and did not open his lips. He went like a domesticated sheep, being escorted, plodding along to be slaughtered, never putting up a fight. He was like a cooperative ewe lamb, brought before her shearers without a fuss. Again, silence. He did not open his lips. The servant was yanked away from containment, out from the restraints that confined him. He was snatched away from justice, and he was withheld a fair trial. Did anybody in his generation give the injustice a second thought? Was there a single contemporary among the servant's people who sensed something was wrong with this whole episode? The question is a fair one and puzzling when considering how the servant was scraped off from the land of the living. Look at the means through which he was disposed of and eradicated. The servant was struck, yes. He was plagued, to be sure. But it came from the rebellion of my people, this generation. No surprise. They showed what they really knew about the servant when it came time to get rid of the body. One of their own assigned him a grave with the good old boys, putting him in their own number. He was given a fine burial in the ornate custom of these wicked ones. No expense was spared. While in his life, the rich onlookers distanced themselves from the servant. In his death, they demonstrated that he wasn't supposed to be rejected and quarantined. This is because they knew he had done no violence and attacked no one. They were fully aware of the truth. There was no lie or deceit on the servant's lips. Against the backdrop of all these events, here was Yahweh's take on the servant. Over and against these viewpoints, Yahweh took pleasure in the one who got crushed, and he was pleased with the one who got humiliated. He healed the servant, the one who placed his life as a reparation offering, laying himself down as an asham, the kind of sacrifice that makes a way for people to gain entrance to sacred space. Remember? Just like Yahweh heard David's son, Hezekiah's bitter weeping, and healed him to declare Yahweh's faithfulness to the next generation as a father, the servant, who will be called Everlasting Father, he too will see his seed and be given length of days. The desire of Yahweh will come to pass through the servant. His plan will succeed in the servant's hands. Snatched away from his darkness and deep hardship, the servant will be taken away from the misery concocted by leaders. A dramatic reversal comes for the servant. Light all around him. Taken from the darkness of the lowest depths, he will see light in the highest of heights. In this place, he will be satisfied and filled to the full through intimate knowledge. All that he receives and experiences here. My righteous servant will cause many to be declared and made righteous. They'll be changed in the likeness of the servant, righteous like him. He began this labor and servant's work on their behalf by carting away and carrying off the heavy burden of their iniquities, all their willfully destructive actions. In return for these things, here's my decree. I, Yahweh, will apportion his allotment from among the great ones. With the mighty ones, my servant will divide the war booty, the spoils of his victory. All this because my servant laid bare and exposed his soul to death, pouring out all his life. He was included with the wrong group, numbered among the transgressors, labeled and categorized a rebel. But he was the one who lifted off overwhelming sins, forgiving the sins of the many. He made intercession for the rebels. He stands to mediate on behalf of the transgressors. And there are more videos to come. Yes, that is it for now. I look forward to interacting with people around this. Share the video. Give me feedback in the form of comments. Reach out to me through email, Facebook. Let me know what you think. All right. Thank you.